want to welcome, thank you, to our discussion today, Educators for Palestine Vetoed. This is a discussion about the cases of the National Education Association and the American Historical Association. So let me lay out a little bit of the framework. Today's discussion is endorsed by Labor for Palestine and Drop the ADL from Schools. Let's see, this kind of began originally in January 2025 and 2026. While Israel committed genocide against Palestinians, the American Historical Association voted overwhelmingly to pass the resolution to oppose scholasticide in Gaza. However, the AHA Council vetoed that resolution and overturned the decision of the membership. In July 2025, the Representative Assembly of the National Education Association, the nation's largest labor union, passed a resolution that NEA will not use, endorse, or publicize any materials from the Anti-Defamation League, known as the ADL. However, the NEA's board of directors voted not to implement this proposal. Now, almost a year later, our Educators for Palestine NEA caucus faces another NEA representative assembly after what has been a turbulent year. Educators have faced increasing attacks as their very livelihoods are threatened for speaking out against genocide, whether it be in our classrooms or in public settings. Caucus members have been grappling with internal questions about how to make sure Palestinian liberation still remains a relevant part of the conversation. There's also a unique parallel at play as we watch what has been happening with the Democratic primary elections around the nation and the fact that the American Historical Association elections are live right now. And then NEA will be facing an election of its officers in July. And all of this may seem like inside baseball, only relevant for our respective organizations, but it's part of a broader picture that we're seeing unfold across the nation. Free speech is imperiled by legislation seeking to codify the IRA definition of anti-Semitism as a legally binding definition that blurs the line between political speech and actual animus against Jewish people. All the while, the fact remains that we are still seeing violence carried out upon Palestinian lives, and this violence is supported by our own government. While we are not exactly Italian dock workers that can block weapons per se, we must engage in conversations that will result in meaningful actions to end this violence. Hopefully, this panel is an addition to one of many of those discussions. So this panel seeks to address the following. What responsibility do academic workers have in regards to the ongoing genocide in Palestine and other concurrent or future wars? What material and ideological support can we give to people's movements resisting genocide and war? What happens when our ostensibly democratic organizations overturn our democratic decisions? And what are the next steps for educators organizing for Palestine solidarity? So before I introduce our first speaker, I want to give a little bit of history about the Educators for Palestine Caucus. Unofficially, we are about 6 years old. We are a group of educators that have worked to elevate Palestinian liberation on the floor of the NEA Representative Assembly. In the beginning, we were met with direct tactics to silence discussion, parliamentarian moves to close debate, and failure to pass any motions. As the understanding of the humanitarian crisis in Palestine grew globally, the voice of our caucus grew in strength leading up to last year's opening RA. So our first speaker is Judy Greenspan. They are a Jewish teacher from Oakland, California, a member of the Oakland Education Association and Bay Area Labor for Palestine. Judy uses they, them pronouns and has spent decades supporting the fight for a free Palestine, opposing all U.S. wars and militarism abroad, and fighting for the human rights of Black, Latinx, Indigenous, and LGBTQ plus communities at home. So before Judy begins, I do want to let everybody know if you have any questions, you can put them into the webinar question feature that is on the Zoom. And Judy, would you like to join us?
Great.
Judy, are you ready to join us?
Okay, now I can hear you. I couldn't hear you. Sorry.
There we are.
Yep, I couldn't hear you. I couldn't even hear that you'd
Okay.
done it. All right.
Would you like to tell us about NBI 39?
Oh, sure. Sure. So thank you everyone for the opportunity to speak at this webinar. I am a member of Educators for Palestine, a caucus within the National Education Association, and I'm a new member, so I'm going to leave it to Melissa and others to talk about its history. And suffice it to say, supporting Palestine openly and trying to find ways to talk about it has not been easy. Last summer, I introduced the new business item calling for the NEA to drop the ADL. The Anti-Defamation League, which masquerades as a civil rights organization, is actually an incredibly harmful and racist group that has allied itself with the Christian right wing and white racist organizations and is responsible for many of the lawsuits, doxing, and retaliation against educators and others who dare to speak up about Palestine. The ADL defines anti Semitism as any criticism of Israel, any mention of the US Israeli genocide, and any physical or verbal support of the Palestinian struggle. The NBI that came out of the hard organizing work of the Education for Palestine caucus, Educators for Palestine, was short and to the point. The NEA will drop any affiliation with the ADL and refuse to use any of its resources. The NBI passed at the 2025 NEARA, reflecting a welcome change of thinking from the delegates. However, as you know, the NEA Executive Committee nullified the vote 2 weeks later after being pressured and attacked by Zionist groups. Directly following the floor vote and for months after, we were doxxed and targeted by the ADL and other Zionist groups and others in the press and on social media. We went back to our local union affiliates and continued the work of organizing against the ADL. In December 2025, after a 3-month-long educational campaign, my union, the Oakland Education Association, passed a strong NBI against the ADL. Several other state and local affiliates did the same. Since October 2023, rank and file OEA, that's Oakland, not Oregon, members have been very busy organizing teach-ins, supporting student walkouts, teaching liberated ethnic studies, and being very visibly pro-Palestine. In 2024, school district investigations against teachers for their pro-Palestine organizing began and have continued into this day. This year, the California Department of Education decided to sue my school district for anti-Semitism because OUSD didn't discipline teachers who participated in teach-ins and other pro-Palestine activities. The Brandeis Center also jumped into the act, including Oakland in its broad lawsuit against several California school districts, designating us again as anti-Semitic. The result of both lawsuits has been twofold. My school district has opened up more investigations against teachers, and the lawsuits have scared many teachers underground. Everyone is afraid of being labeled anti-Semitic. Teachers who are being investigated are fearful of being vocal for fear of retaliation, doxing, worst case scenario, losing their jobs. We already had a first year teacher lose his job after sponsoring the founding meeting of Bay Area Labor for Palestine at an Oakland public school. Through the efforts of rank and file teachers, though, we have been able to push back. On May 13th, just a few weeks ago, we held a well-attended press conference of Jewish educators, education workers, parents, and students outside the Oakland School Board meeting. We had previously circulated a letter from this ad hoc grouping that garnered 80 signatures and presented it to the board to stop the attacks on teachers, students, and the larger community for opposing the Israeli genocide against Palestine. At about the same time we were organizing this fight back, the Brandeis Center unleashed a federal civil rights complaint against the NEA, alleging discrimination and harassment of Jewish members at last year's NEA-RA following the vote to drop the ADL. The irony is that even though the NEA decided to distance itself from the ADL vote, it was still attacked by the Zionists. As a Jewish member of NEA, I am disgusted with the Zionist use of lawsuits and civil rights complaints to justify their harassment, doxing, firing, and sometimes deportation of Jewish, Arab American, Palestinian, and other educators and activists who support Palestine, Lebanon, Iran, and all other anti-imperialist struggles from the Middle East to Africa and to the Caribbean. And just a side note, in terms of the fight back, in California, there is a motion to intervene that's brought by Jewish, Palestinian, and Arab American parents against the Brandeis Center's original lawsuit charging anti-Semitism. The parents have been eloquent, detailing how these lawsuits amount to academic censorship, the imposition of a one-sided, distorted view of anti-Semitism, and subject educators, students, and communities to Islamophobia and anti-Palestinian racism. And one final word, the school year ended in Oakland on May 28th. I know many of you are very jealous. We do start earlier than you. Just a week before school ended, Oakland teachers received a directive to take a mandatory anti-Semitism training designed by the ADL by June 1st. Again, it's fallen to rank and file teachers to push back. The Oakland Teachers Union will not openly step forward to protest this for fear of being branded anti-Semitic. We are reaching out to Oakland educators and asking them not to take the training, and we are meeting with Parseo, a group that defines anti-Semitism within the broad struggle for collective liberation. We hope to substitute its anti-Semitism training for the ADL one. This is not the time to stop talking about Palestine. The US government and Israel want to bury Palestine. It is our role as educators and workers to step up our solidarity and to demand an end to the US-backed Israeli genocide in Palestine and the rest of the Middle East.
Thank you, Judy. I'm going to introduce our next two speakers from Historians for Peace and Democracy. They're going to be kind of speaking back to back. They put their presentations together. So we have Margaret Power. Margaret's a professor of history, retired from the Illinois Institute of Technology. She's author or co-author of 7 books, including Right-Wing Woman in Chile, Feminine Power and the Struggle Against Allende and Solidarity Across the Americas, the Puerto Rican Nationalist Party, and Anti-Imperialism. She is co-chair of Historians for Peace and Democracy and on the board of directors of the Puerto Rican Cultural Center in Chicago. And we also have Samantha Payne. Samantha is an assistant professor of history at the University of Chicago. She teaches courses on slavery and emancipation in the 19th century United States and the Atlantic world. She is a member of the steering committee of Historians for Peace and Democracy and has been involved in a number of direct actions organized by Jewish Voice for Peace.
Okay, shall I begin?
Go for it.
Okay, first of all, I wanted to thank you, Sam, and I wanted to thank you for putting this together. And we in Historians for Peace and Democracy, I'll just say HPAT from now on, it's easier. We're really excited to be working with high school teachers, and we think that actually it's really important for professors and high school teachers to work together and form a united front because in many ways we are not in many ways, in every way, we're part of the same struggle. And Historians for Peace and Democracy started in 2003 with a different name, but um, to oppose the war in Iraq. And I wanted to point out one early point of a part of our history, which is particularly relevant, which is that in 2007, the membership of the American Historical Association at the annual business meeting passed a resolution calling on the U.S. to end the war in Iraq. The council at that time decided we will not approve it, but we will send it out to the entire membership. So there's a membership meeting, and maybe a fraction, tenth or so of the membership comes to it. Then there's the rest of the body of the organization. So it was sent out, and two-thirds of the people, the members of the HA, voted to support it. And the reason that's relevant is they could have done that for our two resolutions, and they did not do it. And I think the reason is they were scared that they would win, our resolutions would win. We have been working to support educational rights for Palestinians since 2015, and in 2015 and 2016, we presented two resolutions to the membership body of the AHA at the annual business meeting. Both of them were overwhelmingly rejected. We didn't even get maybe got one third of the vote, and then it went up a little. Maybe got 36% of the vote. I mean, not very much. So what transformed things, and I think has transformed things so much in this country, is both the genocide that has been going on, and also, I think, first and foremost, the resistance of Palestinians and the need that people feel to be in solidarity and to oppose us. And Sam, am I now going over are you now speaking?
Sure, I can take it from
Okay.
here. So, in short, there was another effort on the part of HPAD to put forward another resolution condemning the scholasticide, specifically, right, the destruction of educational institutions and archives and cultural memory within Gaza that began in early 2024. And I joined the effort around that time. And we basically spent the fall collecting hundreds of signatures in support of the resolution, which was then to be put forward at the business meeting at the AHA 2025 annual meeting and voted on by the membership. And it was a triumph. So we won more than 80% of the vote at that meeting. There was standing room only in the room. There was people overflowing out into the hallways. It was generally I found it to be a really solidaristic experience and one that felt really celebratory, that we were really going to, change our profession's attitude towards this problem and speak out against the genocide. And also another part of the resolution was to try to support the reconstruction of educational institutions in Gaza. So within a few days, the executive board of the AHA announced that they were vetoing the resolution on spurious grounds, basically claiming that it was beyond the scope of the organization's charter. It shouldn't have been surprising, but I think we were a bit shocked by this because specifically in a previous instance, you put forward the anti-Iraq war resolution, they had sent it out to the membership for a vote. They chose not to do that, the full membership, like 10,000 members. They chose not to do that in this instance, we think because we would have won. What's also important to emphasize is that at this point we were carrying on another campaign in the OAH, which is the Organization of American Historians, We put forward the exact same resolution. It again passed overwhelmingly. And in contrast with the AHA, they let it, the executive board let it go through. And so they have now actually organized the committee to support educational reconstruction in Gaza, and they are actually working with scholars and educators in Gaza right now to try to facilitate this rebuilding. The AHA continues to insist basically that any speech on Gaza or Palestine will endanger the organization, will subject it to attacks on the part of the ADL, on the part of Congress, that we can't risk the status of our professional organization, which was chartered by Congress. And so we basically, in response to that, have tried to change. We're trying to become more involved in the leadership of the organization itself by running candidates to join the AHA Council and also to join AHA committees. Margaret, do you want to take over from here, or do you want me to keep going?
I can say a few things about what happened after the first resolution was passed
Perfect.
and then they vetoed it. The then president of the AHA and Ben Vinson and Sarah Weichel, who's the executive director, wanted to meet with me and Van Goss, the co-chair of Historians for Peace and Democracy. And they basically said, although I'll just smush it into one thing, there were 3 or 4 meetings, but basically, if you guys drop the resolution, what if we just set up a committee? And let's just not, why do we need to talk about genocide? Why do we need to talk? Because we talked about genocide in the resolution. We talked about the idea of the opposition to U.S. funding of the genocide going on. I said, what if we just drop that? And what if we just set up a committee? And so they asked me, and I said I would consider joining it if two of the 4 Palestinian scholars that we work very closely with, and another group we work with, the Palestinian historians group, would be on it. The 3 of us said yes. Then they said, okay, we're not going to allow the resolution to go. We never said we would withdraw the resolution. We said we would participate in the committee. They said, well, okay, then you have to withdraw, basically then withdraw the resolution. We said, no, the only way we'll be on the committee is if you with allow the resolution to go forward. So it was at one point they had all these weird maneuvers to try and even prevent the resolution coming to the annual meeting due to our steadfast opposition to. We hired an attorney to look through this. It's obviously illegal according to Robert Rules of Orders. You have to introduce new business at a meeting. I'm not that like on top of all that stuff, but luckily some of us are. And so it came forward. And at the same time, one of the things that we said was most academic associations do not allow their executive council or the council to veto a resolution that has been passed in the membership body. So then our next step was to say, okay, we want to introduce a resolution to make it impossible for a veto to happen, which was supposed to go out with the ballot, which went out June 1st, the ballot that you're looking at the screen with our candidates. And they said, oops, sorry, we changed the date. You had to have that on January 15th. So they basically made it impossible for us to submit a constitutional amendment to change the Constitution and thereby prevent them from vetoing our resolution. Okay, I think we have a few minutes. Sam, do you want to say anything about what's been going on with the election stuff?
So the most recent kind of Zionist assault on this campaign is that the AHA executive board, without consulting the council, decided to send an extremely antagonistic email targeting HPAD and the Palestinian Historians Group and Historians for Palestine as a threat to the future of the organization, using pretty egregious language, invoking the, and I quote, wreckage of our profession that we are apparently contributing to by continuing to pursue opposition to genocide. Um, and they did that a few days before the election was scheduled to begin. It's just, yeah, they really don't want this to happen. Um, we put up HPAD put forward a response, which you can read on our website, and I'm sure we can link to that if need be. But basically now our goal is to try to democratically take control of the council and the ideally the executive board as well. We don't really know how that's gonna go yet, but if you are a member of the AHA and you have not voted for our slate of candidates, please vote, please join the AHA and vote so that we can try to alter this professional organization for the better. Is that about where we're at?
I think so.
Yeah, so it's still ongoing. I think the OAH stories suggest that this really could have gone differently and can have a positive impact. And so we just want to see that happen with the AHA as well.
Thank you, Margaret and Sam. It's very interesting. I'm seeing a lot of parallels. I'm actually hearing your story for the first time. I was not in a lot of the planning discussions. So the parallel of what you've experienced with what we experienced with NEA in terms of coming to the realization that a democratic decision could be overturned and then having discussions about, okay, this should not be. So what are we going to do to make sure that in the future somebody else's democratic decision does not get overturned and experience the same pain that we felt? And then what are we going to do moving forward? Like the conversation is like almost the same, but in separate spaces. And that, is a whole separate issue above and beyond the issue of how are we going to continue this conversation about Palestine and what that work looks like moving forward. And then, a whole thought about the weaponization of Robert's rules and how, people in power can take that and kind of twist it to how they want to be able to kind of shape what they feel democracy should look like. But anyway, I kind of digress. Let me introduce our next speaker. We have Mary Najimy coming up next. She's a public school educator of 36 years whose pedagogy and practice is grounded in anti-racism. She served as the president of the Massachusetts Teacher Association from 2018 to 2022, where she led a social justice, anti-racist agenda. She is a co-founder of both NEA Educators for Palestine and MTA Rank and File for Palestine. And she's going to speak about Maryland, MTA Rank and File for Palestine, among other things. Mary?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Thank you to 67 people who gave up their morning or midday on a Saturday, especially as it's close to summer, to be here. And it's really fascinating to hear the story of what's happening inside the Historical Association. So what I want to do is talk about some lessons learned and then pivot into examples of how we continue to fight power in Massachusetts. I'll touch upon a couple of other examples that are happening across the country. I also do want to answer a question that came up in the question and answer, so I'll wrap up with that. But so there's one lesson that we've learned that's a new lesson, and there's about 4 or 5 other lessons that are not new. They are now just applicable to our work with Palestine. And the first lesson for me that's new in both of these stories is that people have changed their minds on the issue of Palestine. And we are seeing this overwhelmingly in the rank and file of whether you're a union or a professional association. And let me just tell you one quick story. When I was speaking at the mic at the Representative Assembly in support of our new business item to drop the ADL, I was at the microphone with another woman, really lovely. We had a pleasant conversation. She was in queue. at the same mic, and she asked me, am I speaking in favor or against? Um, and she was asked by the Jewish Affairs Caucus of the NEA to go to the microphone and yield her time to a speaker who would speak against our new business item. And as soon as she heard um, one of our speakers explain what the ADL has done to Black Lives Matter movement and everybody else, she looked at me and she said, oh my God, why am I at this microphone yielding to somebody who supports that kind of behavior? And she stepped aside from the microphone and she said, Free Palestine. The other lessons that are not new, these are lessons that we know from other struggles. Leaders of institutions will accommodate power structures in order to appease them, as is the case of AHA and NEA. And we just heard one of our panelists talk about how the AHA said it will endanger us. We can't risk the status of the organization, right? Jonathan Greenblatt, the CEO of ADL, called Becky Pringle, and none of us know what was said in the meeting, but you can imagine how that meeting went down. And shortly after that, Becky went through the process of getting the executive committee and the board to overturn our new business item. That's behavior that we are familiar with, right? So we know they will continue to do that. Another lesson is when we disrupt the status quo, the system will bring everything it has to bear down on us, but we have to keep fighting and organizing and building movements, right? Zionism in the state of Israel is losing support of civil society globally and has no other way to win except by trying to intimidate and silence the global movement, and it's not working. Third lesson that we know from other movements, sometimes wins are big events, sometimes they're sweeping, and sometimes wins are incremental. But we have to take every win as a win. Doesn't matter the size or the scope. And then finally, um, when leadership defies the will of the rank and file, you run them out of office, right? We did that in Massachusetts. We formed a progressive caucus because our MTA president defied the will of the rank and file against our standardized, overturning the position we took against our standardized testing, and it's tied to evaluations. We ran a caucus and we've won leadership for 12 years in a row now. So these are some examples of the ways that we keep fighting. And one of the things Melissa referred to is how do we build material and ideological support for people doing the work? Let me just briefly run through 3 or 4 things that MTA Rank and File for Palestine has accomplished. In the early stages of the genocide, we got the board to vote calling for a ceasefire and an arms embargo. We got our board to support local Massachusetts divestment bills that are running through the House and Senate. We got them to pass a resolution educating the rank and file about the weaponization of anti-Semitism and to take a position protecting academic freedom. Now, again, the leadership has been really slow throwing sand in the gear, so this work is still needs us to push to make sure it gets off the ground. The most recent victory we had was beginning of May at our annual meeting, our General Assembly. We put 6 new business items on the floor related to a variety of things related to Palestine. For many reasons, the whole meeting got sabotaged and hardly any new business items got heard. So one member went to the mic, moved to suspend the rules so that we take a straw poll to get a sense of the body on every new business item that hadn't gotten heard. We had our first new business item was to get the MTA to support the Drop the ADL from Schools campaign and sign on and educate our members about it. That came up for a straw poll. 69% of the members voted in favor of the MTA signing on to Drop the ADL from Schools campaign. Now, our Zionist members reacted. It was assigned to them what was to come with the straw poll for the other 5 new business items on Palestine. The only weapon they had was to shut down debate. So they called a quorum, they walked out of the room, and we didn't have quorum, so we had to close the meeting. In one of our local Massachusetts high schools, there were 2 high school graduating class presidents who highlighted their walkout 2 years ago in opposing the genocide in their graduation speech. And another one ended their graduation speech with Free Palestine and ICE out. This is 2 years ago that this stuff happened. So we see the lasting impact of our work. Examples of material and ideological support that we can be providing. We have a Jewish teacher in Massachusetts, doesn't identify as Zionist, was attacked by the community for lessons that she was teaching humanizing the Palestinians. She's not afraid. With the support of MTA Rank and File for Palestine, she and a couple of her coworkers are organizing, and it turns out they're having building-based conversations, and people are furious. Whether or not they support the issue of Palestine, they're starting to make the connection that this is a greater issue about our academic freedom, and they're willing to organize around it. We have parents who have turned to members of MTA Rank and File for Palestine in 2 school districts to push back against the districts who are silencing education on Palestine or trying to adopt the IRA definition. So it's this coalition building that's town by town. This is what I mean by incremental. Town by town, there's starting to be pushback. Let me just name 3 more things, and then I want to answer the question that came up in the chat. Many of you probably saw, and some of you are probably here that are part of the California Teachers Association Jewish and Allied Educators for Palestine caucus, right? They have an open letter to the NEA leadership calling on NEA to stop conflating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. It is such an amazing, and I'll put the link in the chat. It is such an amazing analysis of what the weaponization of anti-Semitism looks like, and some of the resources that are being pushed in our public schools that explain that. The ADC, the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee, filed a lawsuit against Senate Bill 715 in California. It wasn't dismissed, but they were told they have to wait until there's actual harm that has been done. And many of you may have just heard that CARE filed a lawsuit in the Maryland School District for violating a Palestinian teacher's free speech rights on the issue. And a federal judge has allowed the suit to proceed. So we are winning even at times when it feels like the system is stacked against us. We just can't stop. And not only are we winning, but we're growing the movement because there are many educators for Palestine all over the country, whether they're calling themselves educators for Palestine or not. They're doing the work inside higher ed institutions and public school institutions. And we are now slowly connecting to each other, sharing the experiences, sharing the stories, sharing the strategies. One question that came up in the chat was, what do you do when an institution will not welcome Palestinian guests or speakers? I want you all to check out the Institute for the Understanding of Anti-Palestinian Racism. I'm going to put the links in the chat. We're an institution that does advocacy, research, and education on what anti-Palestinian racism is. Let me tell you the 4 manifestations. Erasure, which includes denying the Nakba and the whole history of Palestine or Palestinians as indigenous people. Defamation, defaming Palestinians and their supporters as inherently anti-Semitic, inherently violent. Sorry, I'm blanking on the other 2. Justification of violence and dehumanization, right? Not allowing Palestinians to have a perspective and be invited as a guest is erasure, right? It's exclusion. So you have to, sometimes we fight by fighting, but sometimes we fight by educating. So we have to start by educating our institutions on what anti-Palestinian racism is, and the exclusion of Palestinian speakers is a manifestation of that. So I'm going to put, and then if that doesn't work, then you escalate, right? Then you run the kind of campaigns that you know how to run if it's a union contract campaign, right? Petitions, standouts, flyering, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll stop here, and I will put some resources to anti-Palestinian racism in the chat for everybody.
Thank you very much, Mary. We're busy answering questions in the question and answer. There's a couple that we are going to elevate. I'm looking for our open questions right now. And if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them in there as we're going through them. And I see other people putting resources in the chat for everybody we have a big group in the background working, so you're seeing a lot of links come up, a lot of partners we've been working on through the years. When NBI 39 happened last summer, I just do want to give a shout out to Drop the ADL from Schools and Code Pink. They mobilize an entire group support system around what we went through to push back and to really elevate the work that Educators for Palestine-NEA had done, and to put out press releases and to, kind of bring a spotlight onto the fact that no, this was not right, that NEA was going back on this democratic decision. And I do want to publicly thank them for all the work that they did and have been doing in this past year to just support educators in this battle and fight and making sure that we still have our First Amendment rights in the classroom. Reading through the comments, we have a lot of thank yous here for everybody's panelists speaking. We have somebody saying, I'm a graduate student studying genocide and conflict at George Mason University and the University of Malta, veteran with About Face Veterans Against the War and a member of Rainbow History Project in Washington, D.C. I am here to invite the NEA and other organizations with veteran members to join us in Philadelphia on the 4th of July with a coalition of veterans and active duty members called Veterans Against Fascism. And could I be put in touch with your veteran members to inform what we are about and what we are doing in Philadelphia on the 4th? Okay, so we do have a couple of veteran members in the room, so we will try and make a connection there. And I do have a question to put out to the panelists. Sorry, the chat's going really fast right now. Okay, Zios are especially weaponizing really Title VI as part of their assault on us. As it pertains to public institutions, whether preschool to 12 or higher education, is the application of Title VI to this issue a matter of the judge, arbitrator, etc., or has it been settled, codified somewhere federally that it can be used like this? It kind of spooks school districts into settling, as in my case. So I don't know if anybody has a specific answer for this.
I think it's less about it being codified into law and more about the decisions that the Trump administration is making. They are prioritizing all Title VI claims of anti-Semitism and ignoring everything else. We actually have to start learning how to do the same kind of thing. So when we're in a district, we might have more success filing claims of anti-Palestinian racism with our state attorney generals to push back. But this is why it's so important that we educate our communities and our coworkers on what the weaponization is and how Title VI is one piece of lawfare. Right? Organizing starts with educating. As soon as you can get more and more people on board understanding how the weaponization works, then collectively you have to push back on the school district So if the school district has been mandated because of a Title VI claim to use the ADL, for example, to come in and teach anti-Semitism, you as a local movement have to insist, you have to force the district to do follow-up by inviting other orgs like Parseo and Bend the Arc and the Diaspora Alliance and the Institute for the Understanding of Anti-Palestinian Racism to counter the harm that they have done by bringing in the ADL. So it's not impossible to fight back. We may not be able to stop the district from implementing, but we certainly don't have to let it sit as the status quo.
Hi, and if I could add something, Mary, thank you so much. That was really important what you just said. I think we do have to support, we do have to explore legal responses like they're doing in California, like the parents in California who they haven't had their day in court yet. They filed the paperwork. The day in court is in LA on June 10th. Now, judges have already thrown cases like that out. We don't know if it'll be thrown out or not, but it's the beginning. I really feel like the Zionists and what the lawsuit, or not the lawsuit, but the federal complaint against the NEA from the Brandeis Center, the focus is how did the Jewish Affairs Caucus feel? They felt threatened. They felt scared by all of us, including me. I guess other Jews made other Jews scared, so which is really interesting. But I think that we have to have a legal basis for what we do, and we also have to have a mass organizing basis. And it is very hard. We've been frustrated in the attempt to try to involve, like, for example, our union leadership, although we know they're pro-Palestine, they are so scared to associate the union, the union officially with fighting these lawsuits because they don't want to be labeled. The whole label of anti-Semitism is very heavy. But I do think, so like I would love to countersue. I'm being investigated. I would love to countersue or file some sort of claim against either the state of California or Brandeis or whoever else, because it's hurting me. That's it.
Some definite thoughts and something to explore, I think, how do we fight back at their level? Question for Historians for Peace and Democracy, something that was heard in January. Should I leave the AHA or stay and fight?
We think that we should stay and fight, and I think that's especially been the urging of the Palestinian historians group because a lot of them were members of the Middle East Studies Association, and at a certain point, that organization would not take up the issue of Palestine. So they spent roughly something like 10 years or more trying to work within the organization in order to get better leadership within the organization. So, which is why MESA, Middle East Studies Association, is now one of the targeted organizations. I'm not sure if people know, but the ADL has put out a whole ranking of different academic associations. I won't remember exactly their names, but their categories. But one is really bad, moderate, and okay. And that's all. The criterion is based solely on whether or not you are pro-Israel or pro or not Israel. Up until now, the American Historical Association is in the moderate category. We're not the bad ones yet, and that's because the Executive Council and the Council has systematically vetoed our resolutions. So I think at this point, what we're really trying to do, it's not like I say, hey, yeah, put me in the bad category. But I think, as Sam pointed out earlier, what we're trying to do is democratize the AHA and make sure that it's an organization that truly represents the membership. And for that reason, we're saying we ran candidates last year. We put up 6 candidates. 4 of our candidates won, which is pretty good. This year, we'd actually had a slate of 9 candidates. They disqualified four of our candidates. So we have five candidates are up now. And one thing they're saying, they're like this woman, Mary Beth Norton, who was the past president of the American Historical Association. Maybe people know her. She's an incredibly well-known and respected historian of U.S. women. And to me, she has spoken out against our resolution. She put out a letter I'm not sure to whom it went exactly, but part of it ends by saying, I urge you to vote for the candidates that the American Historical Association has put up because they are qualified candidates, implying that these people that you're looking at are not qualified. And some of these people are I mean, they're all qualified. So it's sort of using this sort of underhanded way to say these people are the good ones, these people are the bad ones, and that they're not qualified. And one thing Sam and I realized we'd forgotten to mention, but Sam earlier, do you want to talk about foreign run? Why don't you take it, Sam?
Oh, sure. So the other thing we've realized is that last year, after our first resolution passed the vote and was then vetoed, the AHA hired a lobbying firm called Thorn Run Partners, who also work for drone manufacturers. And so they spend, I think, $80,000 a year of our funding is going towards this group now, who are also providing them with guidance in how to basically silence us and maintain the Palestine exception within the organization. This is just like, I think when you're seeing these eminent scholars and people who have such kind of prestigious credentials within your profession behave in this way, it just it does really throw into relief how ideological this struggle is and how committed these people are to Zionism and to defending the status quo, and also how afraid they are. I really think we obviously have majority support among I think among most historians in the United States would like to see this go through. And I guess to me the reason to stay in is that reason. And I also think for me it's important to follow the leadership of the Palestinian historians who really want us to stay in the struggle over the AHA. And so that's why I think we should stick with it and keep going.
Okay, we have two more questions, and then we're going to do a wrap up from each of the panelists. Let me scroll back in my chat for a second. Okay, I'm an education professor, and my university uses ADL developed materials for a Holocaust and Genocide Studies Center. Are there examples of college campuses pushing back on ADL materials? I'm not sure if any of our panelists are aware of specific higher ed examples.
I mean, so are they looking for a source other than the ADL?
I think they're looking for specific examples of higher ed pushback against the ADL.
Higher ed.
Yeah. And
I don't know.
maybe
Yeah, I don't know.
get some links in a moment.
Yeah, I think it's not clear uh, how pervasive ADL has been at higher ed. It's really clear that ADL pervades, and I think ADL focuses on. So that might be an example of why there aren't any. But what I do want to encourage you is to go to the Drop the ADL from Schools website. There's every kind of resource there that might help you lay a foundation for starting your own organizing work. And I wonder even if you leave your contact information with the organizers here, we can give it to the Drop the ADL from Schools campaign and have them get in touch with you to let you know if there are higher ed folks working on it or if there are higher ed examples. There are people Actually, there's a book. I have to get the name of the book. It just came out. Amaya Gelman just put together this incredible book on the entire history of the ADL and how it was formed, from the very beginning to undermine the Jewish socialist movement, to all of the ways that the ADL has undermined public education, has attacked communities. So that might be another book that is a good resource for you. Let me find the exact title. I don't want to get it wrong, and I'll put it in the chat too.
Great. And we have one final question kind of leading up to our work this summer. Given the Brandeis Center's federal lawsuit against the NEA, what can NEA members expect at this year's NEARA, and how can we be ready for it? It's a tough question.
Come on,
I don't
Mary. I know
know.
you can say something about it. Okay, I will say that from what I've seen so far, NEA has tightened security and is making more demands on us as delegates and making us sign, they're flashing, standards of conduct paperwork at us when we register and things like that. And I understand, this is what I heard, is that there's going to be a clicker for voting, which might be better because it's really sort of a drag to have to stand up and wave your badge or your whatever you have to show that you're a delegate. But I do believe that we're going to have to be very aware. I think there might be attempts to crash our caucus meetings and things like that. So I just think it's an important thing to keep in consideration because the NEA is very defensive. It's not like they love the ADL, they don't, but they didn't want that. They don't want the shitstorm that happened after the vote, basically. You got anything
Uh,
Mary, to say? Or Melissa, you might have
yeah,
something.
I have a thing. I have a couple thoughts to add to that. In my mind, education is always one of our best weapons, right? When I first started this journey this past 6 years ago, um, I was asked to get involved, and I said, I'm not going to speak up until I become educated on this topic. There's no way I can get involved in this conversation unless I know what I'm talking about. So that was what I did, and I still am learning and still need to learn more. So I will definitely be doing some more reading and making sure that I speak from a place of knowledge and a place of deference for Jewish people and for Palestinian people, right? There's a lot of feelings on both sides, and those feelings must be respected. Um, Also, we will be holding another outside action rally, possibly a march on Saturday, July 4th, with some Denver activists at the close of business that day. So we still intend on having a presence at RA this year. We are not going to hide into the background. Palestinian voices still must be elevated. We're still witnessing a genocide in Palestine and in other areas globally. With that, I'm going to ask our speakers for a 1 minute kind of last thoughts call to action. And Judy, you are up first.
Can I go last?
You want to go last?
Yes,
Okay.
I hate going first. Maybe Mary could take my place and go first. We'll reverse it.
Actually,
Sure,
let's have
happy to.
Margaret go.
So when I was the president of the MTA, my mantra was when we fight, we win. And I really believed that. I believed it for our contract struggles. I believed it for against high stakes testing. I believed it when we were fighting the bullying principle, and I believe it here. We are winning, and we know we're winning because there's every indication. Public opinion polls, people that we didn't know are coming out to be part of the movement, right? We are winning in our local unions by big margins, right? And we also know we're winning by the amount of repression that is being targeted at us. Courage doesn't mean overcoming your fear. Courage means acting through your fear. It takes courage to continue to do the work. And we find that courage when we do the work in solidarity. When we do the work in solidarity, we break the isolation, and that's how we start to win.
Okay, I'm going to follow Mary so then HPAD, they can be together at the end if that's okay. Um, I was going to say, I feel like the biggest fight, not just in education, but everywhere in unions, in the political scene, is to keep Palestine centered. There's a real attempt. There's an attempt. It's dropped out of the news, right? It's no longer. I hope it's being discussed in Iran with the negotiations, but they keep on talking about the ceasefire in Lebanon. There's nothing about the ceasefire in Palestine. So I feel like our job as educators, or our job as pro-Palestinian educators, is to keep centered on Palestine, to not allow this genocide to go unanswered. And it's the hardest battle because nobody wants to talk about it, and they have intimidated and scared people. And I believe with all of the attacks that we have to be as public as possible. We can't whisper about it. We can't stick our head in the sand, hope it ends. I mean, I believe that Palestine is winning, certainly in the hearts and minds of people around the world, if not in the US. It's harder in the US because of all the brainwashing, but I think that they are also winning their freedom. But it's just sort of like the dying breath of Israel and the Zionists is very, very, very hard to take. And we're going to have to bear the brunt of it. The Palestinians are bearing the brunt of it much more than we are. But we have to bear it as educators, and we are going to fight back.
Margaret?
Um, well, I want to thank everybody. First of all, I've learned a lot, and that's really great. I guess the main thing I want to say is, and it's sort of following up what both Mary and Judy said, I think for me, and for many of us probably it's hard not to get discouraged or not to think we're sort of this Sisyphus struggle. We'll go, but I think we also have to look at, for me, what's an amazing example and has always been an amazing example is the Palestinian people themselves and the Palestinian organizations. And for me, I say, look, they are keeping fighting. They are, despite the genocide, despite the starvation, despite the loss of families, despite the destruction of the universities, despite everything, they are continuing to resist. And we have to continue to resist. And I don't know if it'll take 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever, but I think that's how we are as human beings. We, unfortunately, I think being in solidarity means being in active solidarity and not giving up.
Um,
Okay.
I echo everything that's just been said. I would just add a pitch to small things you could do right now. Join the HA and vote for our slate of democracy candidates. My most recent heartening anecdote is that my husband and I were talking to a Palestinian man who owns a store down our street, and we were just saying something like, just know, like, we're on your side. Like, you have so much support behind you. And he was like, the whole world is on our side. And I was like, that's really true, and it's more true now than it's ever been. And so we have to keep the struggle alive and keep going wherever we can.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for joining us today, especially all of our panelists, all of our people that put this together, Terry, Darren, and especially Labor for Palestine, who was kind enough to donate their Zoom today. If you are a member of a labor organization and you are not yet a member of Labor for Palestine, I urge you to check them out and join their coalition, attend one of their meetings. They do some amazing work. They really bring everybody together, get everybody on the same page, very informative. And I'd like to remind people that we will have a recording available. We will also send out the slides with all of the resources that we have in here. And everybody that registered for this will get that email shortly. Thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we will see some of you in Denver.
Bye.